There exists a place most people never hear about. There exists a place where players go when the NBA cannot fit them perfectly. This place is called the Santa Cruz Warriors. It's the G League, the second tier of American professional basketball. It's where dreams go to learn, or to die. It's where hope and despair live in the same cold bed. Gui Santos spent more time in Santa Cruz than in San Francisco. And that was the cruel part of the story that nobody wanted to hear publicly. Gui Santos was chosen by the Golden State Warriors in the 2022 draft. This was the validation he had waited for his entire life. His name was called. He had achieved it. He was Brazilian. He was 20 years old. And he was officially in the NBA. But here is the truth that nobody tells you when you're chosen in the draft. Being chosen and being in the NBA are two completely different things. Being chosen means your name was called in front of billions of people. Being chosen means you have a contract. Being in the NBA means you're playing, you're developing, you're being noticed. Gui was chosen in 55th place, practically the last pick of the entire draft. Practically. But the difference between 54th and 55th place? The difference between being real pick and being experimental pick that could become an asset. In the first 18 months after the draft, Gui played 23 times for the Golden State Warriors. 23 games. In a league that plays 82 games per season, this meant that Gui was present in 28% of games. But being present is different from being integrated. Being present is different from being developed. Gui Santos, in his first complete season, averaged 8.3 minutes per game. Think about that. 8 minutes. In some games, it was less. In one particularly memorable game, memorable because it was particularly painful, Gui played exactly 2 minutes. 2 entire minutes of NBA court time. 2 minutes of his life in a professional stadium against the best players in the world. Meanwhile, his competitors for the position had completely different numbers. Jonathan Kuminga, chosen in 7th place overall in the 2020 draft, 2 years before Gui, averaged 14, 15, sometimes 18 minutes per game. Gary Payton II had a guaranteed contract from the beginning and had 10-12 minutes on average. Buddy Hield was an established and important player for the team, had 20-25 minutes. Gui had 2. Then came the infernal cycle that would define his existence at Warriors. Gui would receive a message in the middle of the night. The message was simple. Warriors recalled you for tomorrow's game. This meant that Gui had to leave Santa Cruz, where he was finally getting rhythm, finally developing understanding, finally being important, and go to Oakland. 1 hour drive through the night. Guy would grab his bag, leave, practice, go onto the empty road. He would arrive at Oracle Arena at 3 in the morning. He would sleep in the gym or in a cramped hotel that Warriors paid for. Next day, game. Gui would enter in the second quarter or third quarter, the moment of the game when the outcome was practically decided. His playing time was 2-3 minutes. They were called garbage minutes. Garbage minutes. Minutes that don't matter because the outcome has already been defined. Minutes where you're waiting for the game to end, not playing to win. One small mistake, and every 20-year-old player makes a mistake in 2 minutes when adrenaline is at maximum. And Gui would exit. Exit the court, return to the bench, pass through the locker room, see teammates being congratulated for their performance, could do nothing but exist, would go to the plane, return to Santa Cruz, arrive there again at 3 in the morning. Next day, he would receive a message. You're reassigned to Santa Cruz Warriors. Gui would return to G League, start training again, had to understand Warriors' offenses again, develop rhythm again, start integrating again. But this would only last weeks. Then the message would arrive again. Phone buzz. Warriors recalled you. This wasn't athlete development. This was psychological yo-yo. This was a week of hope, followed by weeks of despair. This was a system that prevented growth through inconsistency. What did this do to someone's mind? To their confidence? To their fundamental understanding of themselves as a player and as a person? Gui could never fully understand the Warriors' offense. The Warriors' offense was a work of art built over 10 years of iteration. It was a system that seemed random to the casual observer, but had deep logic. To understand that logic, you needed 20-30 minutes of play per week. Gui had 2 minutes every week and a half. When Guy returned to Warriors 2, 3 weeks later, his teammates had evolved in understanding. His teammates had understood additional nuance. Gui had to relearn from scratch. It was like trying to learn a language when you have class for 5 minutes every 3 weeks. Gui could never build authentic relationships with his teammates. How do you build relationships playing 2 minutes in a month and then disappearing for 3 weeks? How do your teammates know you? How do they know how you play? How do they trust you if you're not there to be part of the daily dynamic? You were a ghost roommate. You were someone in the locker room who appeared and disappeared. You were a number without a name on the Warriors' spreadsheet. Worst of all, your contract was not guaranteed. This meant that Warriors could cut you at any moment without penalty. Warriors could wake up one day and say, "Gui, thank you for your contribution." But no. Gui had no security. Gui had no future. Gui only had this floating and uncertain moment. Then the question began to burn in his mind like a fire he couldn't extinguish. Am I truly bad? Because here's the cruelty of this situation. You can never know the truth. You can't know if you're playing little because you're not good enough or because you're out of the coach's rotation. You can't know if it's your performance that limits or if it's an organizational decision. You can't know if you should keep fighting or if you should have stayed in Brazil where you could be playing 40 minutes per night and actually grow as a player. Gui was 55th pick, practically the last pick of the entire draft. Kuminga was 7th pick, highly expected from the beginning. Peyton was an important player with a contract. Heald was an established and reliable player. Gui was experimental. Guy was draft and stash. That type of pick you make because you still have a pick and can leave in G League developing, without rush, without imminent expectation. Warriors didn't need Guy to be good now. Warriors had Steph Curry. Warriors had Klay Thompson. Warriors had Draymond Green. Warriors had Kuminga emerging. Warriors had Peyton. Warriors had a line. And Gui was at the end of it. Gui was beyond the end of it. Gui was on the waiting list for the line. The locker room dynamic reflected this invisible but tangible reality. When Gui entered the locker room, teammates saw him as someone temporary, as someone who was there by chance, as someone who needed to prove he deserved to be there, but who wouldn't have time to prove it because he didn't have enough minutes. You can feel that dynamic. You can see it in the eyes. You can hear it in the silence when you enter the room. One specific day captured all of this perfectly and traumatically. Gui was in Santa Cruz playing 35 minutes against a development team. Gui was exceptional that game. Gui grabbed offensive rebounds that nobody else could get. Gui facilitated passes that created opportunities. Gui defended with intensity that came from finally being on the court. Gui was, in TC that game, the best player on the court by far. Gui was dominant. Next night, Warriors sent a message. Warriors called. Gui returned to the NBA. Next game, 2 minutes. One defensive mistake that any young player makes under NBA pressure. Gui exited. Gui was substituted. After the game, nobody from Warriors spoke with Gui about his exceptional performance in Santa Cruz. Nobody said, "You were incredible there yesterday. Keep developing like that." Nobody acknowledged that he had been absolutely brilliant in a different context. It was as if that game hadn't existed, as if Gui hadn't proven anything. Gui realized in that moment something devastating. He was a number. He was an experiment. He was an asset that Warriors had on the spreadsheet, not an investment that Warriors had made. It was completely different. A number can be discarded. An investment is expected to yield returns. And the more this happened, recall, 2 minutes, reassign, the more Gui began to question if there was something fundamentally wrong with himself. Not with the system, with himself. You can feel when your hope is slowly disappearing. It's not dramatic. It's not a single moment where you wake up and say, "I'm giving up." It's slow. It's like water leaking from a bucket that has a small hole. You don't notice while it's happening. You don't notice when you should stop it. But one day you look at the bucket, and the bucket is completely empty. The water is no longer there, and you can't even remember exactly when it all disappeared. Gui Santos was experiencing this slowly over months. He was seeing his hope leak day by day, week by week, month by month. The real frustration wasn't that he played little. Little playing time is reality for many athletes. The real frustration was that he couldn't learn absolutely anything because he played so little. Learning was impossible. Basketball is not like many other sports. You cannot learn complex offense by watching from far away on the bench. You cannot learn the movements just by studying video. You can learn offense by playing. You can learn by being on the court, feeling the movements, understanding why your teammates move in the exact way they move, recognizing patterns through repeated experience. Warriors had sophisticated and evolved offense. It was a system that had developed and refined over 10 years of iteration. It had specific nomenclature for each movement. It had movements that seemed random to the new observer, but had deep tactical purpose. To understand that deep logic, you needed to be on the court 20, 30, 40 minutes per game consistently. Gui had 2 minutes and a week's interval. When Gui returned to the NBA week after week, he had to relearn everything from scratch. His teammates had evolved in their understanding of the system. Their positioning was slightly different now. Their reading of the opposing defense had changed based on incremental learning. Their timing had refined. Gui hadn't been there to notice those changes. Gui hadn't been there to participate in that collective development. Gui had to figure everything out, again alone. This created a guaranteed cycle of error and punishment. You enter without fully understanding the Warriors' offense. You make mistakes because you don't understand the movement. You're punished for that mistake. You exit, you're substituted, you return to G League. Next time you return weeks later, you still don't understand because you still haven't been given enough time to learn. You make mistakes again. You're punished again. When you're in that repetitive cycle, the only logical conclusion your mind can reach is, "I'm bad." Gui saw Kuminga improving every week. Kuminga had consistent court time. Kuminga had the chance to learn the system incrementally. Kuminga had the chance to make mistakes, adjust, make mistakes again, adjust again. And that is the true process of athletic development. Gui didn't have a development process. Gui had a punishment process. Gui saw Peyton playing and growing. Peyton wasn't constantly questioned. Peyton had confidence because he had the chance to develop confidence. When you enter for 10 minutes of play, knowing you have another 10 minutes of opportunity next week, you can relax enough to learn. You can learn. You can grow through repetition. Gui could never relax. Gui knew it was 2 minutes. Gui knew that every second counted with maximum importance. Gui knew that one small mistake meant no more chances for entire weeks. How do you relax in that impossible context? How do you learn when you're in a state of existential panic? So Gui would enter nervous, enter with fear that burned, enter as if he were in a continuous test that was statistically impossible to pass. And when you enter with fear controlling your mind, you make mistakes, because fear paralyzes your movement, because fear makes you overthink every move, because fear makes you question your own actions while you're trying to act. The loneliness of this was overwhelming and silent. Your colleague Kuminga was growing and improving, not necessarily because he had superior talent, but because he had consistent chance to grow. Your colleague Peyton was growing for the same reason. Your colleague Heald was an important and respected player because he had time to execute. You were behind. Everyone could feel it. And you knew viscerally that the more time passed in that position, the further behind you fell. Because athletic growth is exponential. The more you learn, the faster you learn after that. The less you learn, the slower you learn afterwards. You were in a downward spiral. Guy felt this in the depth of his being, felt as if he were in quicksand trying to get out. The more you move, the more you try, the deeper you go in. The less you move, and just accept, the deeper you still go in. There's no way out. There are only different speeds of sinking. The question that wouldn't leave his mind day after day: when will my chance come? But the even worse question, the more destructive question: or has my chance already passed, and I've already failed? Because in a fiercely competitive system like the NBA, the longer you take to be good, the longer you take to be integrated, the more you're passed by. Other players are growing exponentially. Your teammates are growing on the same team. The team is adapting to them, not to you. The team is building the future around them. At some critical point, if you can't keep up, you fall behind permanently. The window closes. Opportunity disappears. Gui saw statistics every day. Gui saw that Kuminga, even with inconsistent time at the beginning, was catching rhythm now. Peyton was integrated into the rotation. Heald was important and trusted. And Gui? Gui was in exactly the same statistical place as 6 months ago, which was the same place as a year ago, which was the same place as when he started. Gui began to train differently, not with wisdom, but with desperation. Gui began to come early to the Santa Cruz gym and stay until late at night when nobody was there. Gui began to do extra training knowing he would only have 2 minutes against Warriors. Gui began to do specific training for those 2 minutes. Practice perfect defense, practice quick offensive reading, practice not making mistakes. But that was absurd. You cannot develop as a professional player preparing for only 2 minutes. You can only survive those 2 minutes. You can only not make mistakes. You can only exist without leaving a negative mark. This isn't development. This is fear maintained in the form of training. The frustration began to leak through all the cracks of his psychology. Gui was constantly irritated. Irritated with teammates who didn't understand. Irritated with coaches who didn't explain. irritated with Warriors who didn't invest. Gui was frustrated in practices. Gui began to question everything he did. Do Warriors really believe in me as an organization? Or do they see me as a number on the list that isn't working? Would it be better to be in G League all the time, developing without interruption? Or should I have stayed in Brazil where I could be playing 40 minutes per night and actually grow as a professional player? These questions burned in his chest, and Gui had no answers to any of them. Nobody offered answers. The worst of all was that nobody at Warriors talked to him about this. Nobody offered clarity. Nobody said, "You're in a specific development plan. Here's the approximate timeline." Or, "You're not working within the system. You'll be cut in X weeks." Gui was in limbo. And limbo is psychologically worse than rejection, because rejection offers closure. Rejection offers truth. Limbo offers only eternal waiting. Gui was a ghost. Gui was existence without substance or meaning. Gui was a number on the list without context or purpose. Gui was an asset that could be moved at any moment. And the more weeks passed, the more months passed in that fluctuation, the more Gui began to believe that maybe the reason he was a ghost was because he truly wasn't good enough. Maybe Warriors were right. Maybe it was true. Steph Curry saw. Curry had been playing for the Golden State Warriors for 15 years. Curry had seen dozens and dozens of young players pass through the program. Curry had seen the best talent in basketball. Curry recognized the sign of someone who was crumbling psychologically internally. Curry had seen that destructive process before. Curry knew what it looked like. Curry saw Guy on the Warriors bench during practice training. Saw the expression on Guy's face when he thought nobody was looking. It was an expression of silent despair. It was an expression of someone who was beginning to not believe in himself. It was an expression that Curry had seen in the mirror 20 years ago. After practice training ended, after all the players had gone, home to their houses or commitments, Curry called Gui for a private conversation. Empty locker room. Just Curry and Gui in the space that normally was noisy and full of lives. Curry: "Do you want to talk about it?" Gui: "About what?" Curry: "About you dying inside." Gui didn't respond immediately. Gui looked down. Gui understood in that moment that he couldn't fool Curry. Curry had played basketball at the highest level for longer than practically any living person. Curry knew doubt. Curry knew confidence paralysis. Curry knew that silence of despair. Curry: "Do you want to talk?" "Really?" Gui: "There's nothing to talk about, I'm fine." Curry: "Guy, you're an NBA player and you look like you want to be anywhere else on this planet." Guy sat on the locker room bench. Guy took a deep breath. Guy began to speak, began to vomit everything he had been keeping inside, everything that had been burning silently. Guy: "I don't know if I'm bad or if I'm out of the rotation. I can't figure it out. Nobody tells me." Gui: "I don't know if my time will come. I don't even know if I'll have a real chance." Gui: "I don't know if Warriors believe in me as an organization, or if I'm just a number that's worth nothing." Gui: "I enter for 2 minutes, make one mistake that anyone makes, exit. How do you build confidence in that? How do you learn in that? How do you grow in that?" Gui: "My teammates are growing. Kuminga is growing. Peyton is integrated. Hield is playing important time. Everyone is moving forward. I'm in the same place as 6 months ago, which is the same place as a year ago." Gui: "I train extra. I study video every day. I do everything right. Everything they told me to do. And nothing changes. Nothing." Gui: "And the worst? I start to think that maybe Warriors are right. Maybe I'm really not good enough for this league. Maybe I don't have a future here. Curry listened to everything without interrupting a single time. Curry let Gui empty completely. Curry knew this was necessary. Then Curry asked the question that would change everything. Curry, do you think I'm good enough? Gui, of course. You're the best player in the world. You're generational talent. Curry, okay. Now listen to my story because it's true. When I started, I was 7th pick. 7. Not 55th like you. 7. Golden State Warriors officially believed in me. I had a guaranteed contract. Curry, but you know what? Even with that status, even with that security, I was doubted. My agent said I was too small for the NBA. My body was too fragile. My ankles were inevitably going to stop me. I was never going to last or be relevant in this league. Curry, I had the chance to play real time. I had that advantage you don't have. And even with the chance, I was constantly questioned. I had to fight for minutes like you. Difference? I had more minutes because I had a guaranteed contract. But psychologically, exactly the same thing. Same doubt. Same question burning. Am I good enough? Gui, but you proved you were. You proved it. Curry, yes. But that took years. Years. And during those years, there were moments, many moments, when I questioned everything. When I thought about giving up. When I thought if I should have stayed in college or gone somewhere else. Curry leaned forward. Curry looked directly into Gui's eyes. Curry, so I'm going to be completely honest with you about something important. That's not the question you should be asking. Gui, what's the right question then? Curry, the right question is, am I ready now to seize the opportunity when it comes? Gui, but I don't have opportunity to be ready. I have 2 minutes. Curry, exactly. That's the central point. Curry took a deep breath. Curry, you can spend your entire life preparing for the perfect opportunity. And guess what? You're never going to feel 100% ready when the chance really comes. Because the naked truth is that you're ready while you're waiting. You're ready now, in every moment you live. Gui, how am I ready in 2 minutes? How does that make sense? Curry, you're ready because you're in the NBA, because you managed to get here, because you have a chance, even if it's small, to make a real difference. Curry, Gui, you're waiting. That's your entire problem. You're waiting for the big chance. You're waiting for 20 minutes that seem fair. You're waiting for an opportunity that seems appropriate to your talent. And while you're waiting, you're not acting. You're not creating. Gui, so what do I do? Curry, you don't wait anymore. You act. Silence. Complete silence. Gui let this penetrate deeply. Gui let this truth work on him. Curry, do you want to know the complete truth? Gui, yes. Tell me. Curry, you're not good enough yet. You probably don't deserve 20 minutes yet. You probably don't deserve to be in regular rotation at this moment. Gui felt as if Curry had punched him directly in his stomach. The truth was brutal. But Curry continued, and his voice was even stronger. Curry, but you will be good enough. You will deserve those minutes. You will earn that trust. Not because you wait passively, but because you will create that opportunity through consistent excellence and deliberate action. Curry, when you enter the court, you don't enter to survive that time. You enter to be unforgettable. Gui, in 2 minutes? How is that possible? Curry, in 2 minutes, in 5 minutes, in 30 minutes. You don't care how many minutes you have. You care deeply what you do with those minutes. Curry, When I started in the NBA, I had exactly the same mentality you're having now. I thought, when will my big chance finally come? I thought, when will I be respected? Then my coach sat me down and told me exactly what I'm telling you now. And I didn't understand immediately. But eventually, I finally understood. Curry, opportunity is not something you wait for like rain. Opportunity is something you deliberately create. Gui let that enter too. Gui let all the truth enter. Curry stood up to leave. Curry, so when you enter next time, you're going to completely change your mentality. You're not going to enter trying just not to make mistakes. You're going to enter trying to be unforgettable. Difference? It's huge. It changes everything. Gui, how do I do that? Curry, you don't think about time. You don't think just 2 minutes, so nothing really matters. You think, I have 2 minutes to show Warriors they can trust me. You think of each movement as a vote for your future. Curry, I'll see you later. When you're finally ready to act, instead of passively waiting, you come back to tell me. Curry left Gui alone in the empty and silent locker room. Gui sat in profound silence. Gui let everything process through his system. And Gui realized something devastating and liberating at the same time. He had been completely wrong. He had been in the wrong mentality. He wasn't a victim of an external system. He was a victim of his own internal paralysis. After that deep conversation in the empty locker room, Gui never saw 2 minutes the same way again. Warriors played against a mid-level team 3 days after that transformative conversation. Warriors called Gui. Gui was recalled from Santa Cruz. Gui went to the stadium. Gui was playing again. But this time, Gui didn't enter thinking about survival. Gui didn't enter thinking, survive these 2 minutes without making a mistake, and you'll return to Santa Cruz. Gui entered thinking, make these 2 minutes unforgettable for Warriors, for coaches, for yourself. The difference was everything. Everything. It changed every aspect of how you act, how you move, how you think. Gui entered with confidence he hadn't had before. Gui entered relaxed and ready. Gui entered as if he had 20 minutes to prove his worth, not 2. In his 2 minutes, Gui grabbed an offensive rebound that literally nobody else could get. Gui made an assist pass to Kuminga that resulted in a perfect layup. Gui played suffocating defense against the opposing wing that forced a turnover. Gui exited after 2 minutes with more impact and added value than in many of his previous 8-minute sessions. Brandon Podziemski, who was on the bench next to Curry, turned specifically to Steph Curry. Podziemski, that guy has something different today. Something really changed. Curry, he finally understood the truth. When Gui returned to the bench after that game, he wasn't frustrated as he normally would be. Gui was satisfied. Gui was calm. Gui had done his job within the time he had. Gui had been effective with his 2 minutes. Nobody immediately offered more minutes. Nobody made promises. But Gui understood something new. He had created something. He had created a reason for Warriors to consider. He had created momentum. Next Warriors game, Gui stayed on the court 4 minutes. It was small progress, but it was real progress. Gui used those 4 minutes to again be impactful. Pressurized defense, intelligent movement, game intelligence. Next game, 5 minutes. Not because Warriors had made a strategic decision to promote Gui, but because when Gui entered, Warriors won more frequently. Because Gui's plus-minus was beginning to appear positively in the statistics. Because coaches were beginning to notice that something had fundamentally changed. Gui wasn't waiting for opportunity anymore. Gui was acting to create opportunity. The transformation was subtle, but absolutely radical. Gui didn't change as a player physically. Gui had the same skill set. Gui had the same body, same speed, same strength. Gui changed in mentality. Gui changed from waiting to action. Gui changed from victim to creator. Gui trained differently now. Gui didn't come early and stay until late, because I need to be perfectly prepared for the big chance that may or may not come. Gui came because every day is a chance to improve and to get closer to what I want to be. Gui wasn't preparing for a distant future opportunity. Gui was maximizing immediate present opportunity. Week after week, Gui's minutes increased. Not dramatically suddenly, but consistently and methodically. From 2 minutes to 4 minutes. From 4 minutes to 6 minutes. From 6 minutes to 8 minutes. From 8 minutes to 10 minutes. 2 months after that transformative conversation in the locker room with Curry, Warriors had a situation where Jonathan Kuminga was injured. Warriors could call another player from G League, or Warriors could give an expanded chance to Gui. Warriors chose Gui. Gui played 12 minutes. 12 minutes he had been training his entire life to be ready for. Gui was exceptional. Gui grabbed rebounds on the offensive side. Gui facilitated intelligent passes. Gui defended multiple positions with confidence. Gui understood the Warriors' system because he had trained to understand it during every opportunity. Coaches saw a new player on the court, and they didn't see someone who had simply gained opportunity by coincidence. They saw someone who had created opportunity through consistent excellence in every moment given to him. After the game, Curry sat next to Gui in the locker room. Curry, do you know what you did in that game? Gui, what? Curry, you didn't wait to be chosen or discovered. You chose yourself. And that was the fundamental truth of transformation. Gui hadn't waited for Warriors to finally believe. Gui had created a reason for Warriors to have no logical choice but to believe. Next month, Gui was playing 8 minutes per game consistently, being called in expected rotation. Next month, Gui was respected by his teammates as a legitimate part of the team. Next month, Gui had real integration, not because Warriors finally noticed him or finally believed, but because Gui had finally noticed himself. Gui had finally believed in himself. The journey had been cruel and crucifying. But Gui understood now that change was never external. Change was completely internal. Gui had been waiting for the perfect opportunity. Gui should have been creating it with the imperfection he had. Months later, Gui was in an interview and someone asked about the experience of being in G League constantly fluctuating. Gui reflected on everything he had gone through, everything he had learned. Gui, I want young players to understand something crucial. There is no right time to start your real journey. There is no perfect moment when you're finally going to be 100% ready and confident. There is you ready now, or there is you're never going to be ready. Choose one. Gui, because if you wait for the perfect moment, you're going to be waiting your entire life. The perfect moment never comes. The perfect moment doesn't exist. You need to make the perfect moment with the limited time you have. Gui, Steph Curry showed me that minutes themselves don't matter. Performance on the court matters. Impact matters. If you're impactful in 2 minutes, you'll earn 4. If you're impactful in 4 minutes, you'll earn 8. If you're impactful in 8, you'll earn 15, 20. Guy, but you have to start being completely impactful with what you have. Not with what you wish to have. Not with what you think you deserve to have. Guy paused. Guy breathed. Guy, I was in Santa Cruz thinking, when will my big chances finally come? When will Warriors give me 20 minutes to prove? I should have been in Santa Cruz thinking, how do I make these minutes my big chance? How do I make every moment impactful? Gui, now I completely understand. Opportunity is not something you passively receive from the hands of destiny. Opportunity is something you deliberately create through consistent excellence in every moment you get. And that was the profound truth of complete transformation. Gui had started as a ghost, invisible, doubting himself, paralyzed by expectation and fear. Gui had ended as someone indispensable, respected, confident, crucial to his team. Not because the external system changed. Guy changed, and the mindset change from waiting to action was absolutely everything he needed.